Okay, namaskar everyone. Thank you for attending today's meeting. It is great pleasure for me to welcome you to this very important session of Bharatiya Itihas Lecture Series, organized by VHPA Washington DC chapter. We have one of the eminent pundits with us today to enlighten us on Rishi Gautama's NyayaDarshana, which is one of the 6 major schools of Sanatana Dharma we call Shaddarshan. As we know, the word darshan derives from Sanskrit. This actually means vision or realization of Atma. These six schools, complementary to each other, they are traditionally viewed as the 6 branches of the tree of Vedic knowledge. This enlightened Darshan thought provides Siddhantic explanation of the ultimate reality and intelligent principle we call Chaitanya in Sanskrit behind everything, and also provide a practical sadhan or means of moksha. All of them explain the moral siddhant of their Darshanik pranali or systems. All work of this school in the form of short sutras. Nyaya school, one of the oldest schools of Bharatiya Darshan, and its source treasures is the Nyaya Sutra of Sri Gautama. Gautama is also known as Akshapada, as we know, because he was always so much wrapped up with his thoughts that he was unaffected by outside world. One day he was walking along thinking over some philosophical problem, and he fell into a well. Ishvara then rescued him and fixed his eyes on his feet. So that's why he called Akspada. Nyaya means justice, rules, methods. The word also suggests that by which mind reaches to a conclusion by applying these rules or methods. NyayaDarshana is known as Shastra, science of logic, Vada Vidya, science of debate, and on VHPA, science of critical study of investigation. Actually, Anvikshika is the original name of the Shastra, as I learned from some pundits, came to know with scholars. NyayaDarshana's main purpose is to establish by reasoning that the Karta of or creator of all the world is Parmeshwara. Of course, it seeks to prove the existence of Ishvara through pramanas or inference. We call Upman and Shabda Pramana also. Parmeshwara is the limit or the reason of the creation. Reasoning thus has a major place in Nyaya. Logic or reasoning, of course, is absolutely necessary to study. This was a brief overview of Nyaya Shastra. And pardon me, Nilesh, if I have said something incorrectly. Now we have come to introducing, although he does not need an introduction, but I will still do it. Now, I have the honor to introduce our very prolific speaker, thinker, writer, Sri Nilesh Okti, who will enlighten us, his scientific mimamsa, or an investigation of the NyayaDarshana. Nilesh is a corporate consultant. He holds PS and MS in chemical engineering and an executive MBA. He is adjunct assistant professor, School of Indic Studies at the Institute of Advanced Sciences, Dartmouth, Massachusetts. His main interests in astronomy, archaeology, geology, genetics, quantum mechanics, economics, ancient narratives. He does write extensively on Bharatiya Iतिहास. He helps Indians become aware of the deep antiquity of Indian civilization so that they truly comprehend, present, or defend the grand narrative of India, unlike most other Indian researchers, because he built it through scientific acumen and logical reasoning. Nilesh was invited by many prestigious universities for his lectures to share his research work in Bharat as well as in the US. He is also a recipient of Best Paper Award, Swadeshi Indology, Conference by Infinity Foundation, and then his book, When Did the Mahabharata War Happen? Mystery of Arundhati, we know Arundhati Nyaya, was nominated for the Lagatos Award by London School of Economics of his contribution to the philosophy of science. He has written books on Bharatiya culture, civilization, basic sciences, especially astronomy in Vedas, Purana, Ramayana, and Mahabharata. Few names of his publication are mentioned here. The historic Ramaja phenomenal work. It's a big book, but I think it took me a long time to do that. But yeah, one should read it. When did the second one, when did the Mahabharata war happen? Mystery of Arundhati, Brief Nirvana, Astronomy is, for example, a few days ago, I listened to his two outstanding lectures on Samgundha, lectures for Sublime Atlas, knowledge of our ancestors, of the world geography as early as 14,000 plus years, from Valmiki description in Ramayana. And another lecture was the city of Krishnadwarka, from mythology to history. These lectures were just phenomenal. Now I would like to invite Sri OK for his Vaigyanik Mimamsa scientific investigation on Nyaya Shastra. Please join me in welcoming Nilesh. Thank you so much.
Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining this afternoon. And special thanks to Arunaji. Arunaji, I would like to formally announce you as my brand ambassador. You follow my talks, you read my books.
Thank you.
And,
yes,
and
I
you,
do.
you summarize it very well. Sometimes some of the things that you were saying, and I was saying, oh, okay, when did I do that? Of course I've done it, but I may forget those.
So I am reminding you, right? Yeah.
That's right. Okay, well, so thank you everyone for joining. Of course, this is my first time joining your group. I see this as a very informal group. That's how I prefer it. So even Arunaji gave a very good introduction to NyayaDarshana, also the context of NyayaDarshana. What I have found is, and I'll talk from my experience, is before I actually got into any of these darshana, I have heard about them. Well, Patanjali is, I think, the first that that is most popular, that everyone hears about it. Patanjali Yoga Sutra, and of course there are Vaisheshika and others, but we are not exactly sure what they might be. And then when finally I have my hands on it, initially, you're saying, okay, maybe there is something useful, but who knows? And frankly, it is true. I mean, I now almost carry the book of NyayaDarshana with me. I mean, some reference point is good. And this NyayaDarshana took me to other darshanas, Sankhya Darshan, Vaisheshika, still Yoga Darshan, and the Uttara Mimamsa, which is Vedanta. Still, I struggle mightily with Purva Mimamsa. So when I look at it, I find it hard for me to be engaged with that Shastra, but with that darshan. But there could be a time, we have to always try again multiple times. But today we are going to talk about NyayaDarshana, and Arunaji mentioned that these are all complementary. However, sometime if you listen to the experts of each of these darshana in conferences, like I was at the Vedanta conference almost year and a half ago, and when certain person is talking expert in a certain darshana, it may appear, or sometimes it is, as if like they're denouncing the other darshanas and trying to establish the supremacy of that specific darshana. I don't know if they were doing that, but if they were truly doing it, then they are wrong, I would say. And if I misunderstood them as if they were doing it, then that's understood, because a certain darshana is more appropriate in a certain situation, and that's why it appears like that. For example, like just take India as an example. We are here from I don't know how many different states, but we will speak many different languages as our mother tongues. And to each individual, that mother tongue is more dear. Okay, so that's kind of understandable. But that should not come at the cost of somebody else's affection for their mother tongue. It is very much the same way with these Darshana Shastras. And in fact, any genuine student of Indian civilization would spend time on all of them. With that, let me start sharing my slides that kind of grounds everyone on the same page. So people are not wondering where this presentation is going. I will go for about 40, 45 minutes, maybe max 50 minutes. And then if you have a time, we'll get into question answers. So I would like to assert, while it is true that all the Darshana Shastras are very important, and this is not at the cost of one or the other. This is purely based on my limited field experience of last 10 years. I published my first book, and Arunaji mentioned when did the Mahabharata war happen, in 2011, June. So almost it's going to complete 10 years now. So yeah, exactly, last 10 years of experience. And what I found when I started talking about the content or the discoveries in my book is that people, and when I say people, I mean, of course, the ordinary people, but also the so-called scholars, academia, researchers, Sanskrit Pandit, government authorities, some foundations, who are working in certain area. Now, some of them understand, others struggle, and some others simply think, well, what are you talking? This doesn't make sense. And a common thread I found throughout, when somebody understands, I understood why they understand over a period of time, of course. And when somebody are extremely confused, or they will take my discovery or my work and present it exactly opposite of what I am saying to their audience. And I realized time and time again that there may be many things missing, but one of the things that is definitely missing in what they're doing is NyayaDarshana, the understanding of NyayaDarshana. Then something else I noticed, which is when I started conducting debate with other Mahabharata researchers who might have made a different claim for the year of timing of Mahabharata or Ramayana or Rigveda, again, I found the comprehension of NyayaDarshan, or rather the weakness in knowledge of NyayaDarshan or lack of comprehension of NyayaDarshan, was the key for the mutual confusion. So I thought I'll share some of these things. I do that indirectly, as Arunaji might know, and some of you who might have listened to it. I always try to bring at least element of NyayaDarshana into every presentation I give. So in this case, you will see the reverse too. So I want to emphasize NyayaDarshan, but to illustrate the point, I'll bring something that you might have seen before. I consider NyayaDarshana as a crucial element for the success of anything, but definitely for success of Indic Renaissance. Some of the points we will focus today: NyayaDarshan itself, elements of NyayaDarshana, original contribution of NyayaDarshana to modern science. And this can be a huge thing. I mean, this bullet number 3 can be a long course, a week-long course. It can be a month-long course. It can be a full semester course, couple of semester courses. So I'll just hint at it. Then scientific acumen and NyayaDarshana, which is kind of same, the 3 and 4. But NyayaDarshana gives you even some things that are more than they are available in modern science. Okay, so if we have a time, we'll go into it. And then I can use anything. I can use dating of Ramayana, dating of Rigveda, dating of Sushruta. But Mahabharata is something, people can quickly relate to. So is Ramayana. So I just picked one, dating of Mahabharata, as an illustration. In fact, Arunaji already mentioned Arundhati Vasishta. So sometimes somebody knowing in the audience what I might be talking about is also useful, because in case, everyone is not aware of it, then somebody can go to someone they already know afterwards and get some additional information. I will also talk about the NyayaDarshana and the growth of knowledge, or the role of NyayaDarshana into growth of knowledge. One of the reasons this becomes possible is because among the Shad Darshanas, NyayaDarshana is considered as a hard realist. Okay. For example, if you go to Uttaramimamsa, like Vedanta, like Shankaracharya, what he emphasized, of course, Shankaracharya was a master of all darshanas. But in terms of a paroksha knowledge, like that ultimate reality, and what is that ultimate is relative. In terms of ultimate reality, all is one, and he came from that point of view. You can almost think of NyayaDarshana is much closer to Sankhya. Now, I'm not going to do distinguish between them, but NyayaDarshana, you can think of it as the hard realist, as hard realist as they get. So this, what you're saying, they will say it's not Maya, it's real. It may be temporary. And so when they say it's temporary, they come closer to Vedanta, okay? Because Vedanta is also saying the same thing. It is Maya in the sense that it is a temporary. But Nyaya is not interested in getting into those arguments which cannot be backed by evidence. In that sense, it's a hard realist science. And therefore, it has much more insights for the modern science, even the insights that are not reached by modern science yet. That is also true of Patanjali, but I'll also tell you slightly what the difference is. And then we'll do a quick summary of what we talked today. This is my slide. If you have seen my talks, you'll always see this slide. So if you get tired of it, I understand, but have it this by heart, or you can take a deep breath when I go through it if you already know it. This is a good summary of my 25 plus years of work. The central axis is the axis of time. Think of this as a Ujjain's Mahakal going from minus infinity to plus infinity. But when we discuss itihasa, okay, our history or our itihasa, okay, purvavrittam, we have to start somewhere and we have to stop somewhere. If you look at Ramayana, or if you look at Mahabharata, what they do when they have to recall the genealogy during the wedding ceremony or whatnot, they don't discuss every king and all. They just start somewhere and then they come to the current time. Similarly, today is where we are. Of course, in future, we will have more history as the time passes. Today is 21st century. If you go to 0 minus, that's 2000 years ago. That's the beginning of a Julian Gregorian calendar. Minus 5K, 5000 BC, that is 7000 years ago. 10K is 10,000 BC, 12,000 years ago, and so on. I started with Mahabharata. I extract all the evidence from, especially astronomy evidence then from Mahabharata, arrived at 5561 BC as the year of Mahabharata war, and no other. Mahabharata evidence, if someone using the principles of our NyayaDarshana or modern science, if that person extracts every single piece of evidence as is demanded, either by modern science or NyayaDarshana, and test it objectively, it should lead you to that year, no other year. I'm not saying it because I ended up reaching there. There is no other way you can go. If you find that somebody else is reaching there, somebody has made a mistake. Very likely somebody has a mistake. And I said very likely because I always want to leave some benefit of doubt open. Okay, that is how the modern science does. That is how even NyayaDarshana thinks. Very interesting. Same thing I did for Ramayana, extracting evidence, astronomy evidence, like there are pieces of evidence into those shlokas. Now, again, focusing on astronomy, I collected some close to 600 pieces of evidence, astronomy evidence from Ramayana. It leads to 12,209 BC as the year of Ram Ravan Yuddha. That's more than 14,000 years ago. And very recently, when one of the professor, where I am an honorary faculty, the Institute of Advanced Sciences, in Professor Balram Singh near Boston. When he asked me, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when I was invited for an international Saraswati conference at Kurukshetra, if I had done some work on Rigveda and Saraswati. And see, this is how we do, right? We start with something we know and then go into the unknown. I had done indirect research on Saraswati because of my research in Ramayana and Mahabharata, but I had studied Rigveda from the dating perspective, like works of Srikant Alagiriji, David Frawley, which is Vamadeva Shastri, many others. Divekar, going back to like 100 plus years, Lokmanya Tilak's works, S.B. Dikshit, Lele, Pawakane, whatnot. But I had not done anything. And so this is what I could come up with based on the Saraswati evidence or river evidence. What is interesting is since then, or for last 10 years, if I have found evidence coming from any other discipline of science, and if I could connect it with the narrations of any of these three, just for example, but this goes to Puranas and Ayurveda text and Darshana text and Upanishad, you name it. What I found is if the evidence exists and if it can be connected, it does support the timeline that I proposed over last 10 years for Mahabharata, Ramayana, Rigveda. In the context, the European Enlightenment came. Some of the great things we already know, such as the Zoom connection here, and we are talking. Some of the bad things, at least for India, is the nonsense of Aryan invasion theory. If any one of you are still hanging on to Aryan invasion theory, too bad. It's time to get rid of it. But the problem is even bigger. It's not just the Aryan invasion. Even if you understand, even if you mentally throw it away, the problem is the brainwashing is so deep, and it's like a 5+ generations of deracination, I call it. So it's not like only the new kids don't understand it. No, actually the old kids don't understand it. And what has happened is because of that, many of our Indic researchers, even the pro-India side researchers, even when enormous scientific, hard, realist, empirical evidence is presented to them, they, in fact, even if they see it, they will shudder, they will stutter, they will shiver to claim anything that goes beyond 10,000 years. Okay, that's very sad, but that's the dogma they are stuck in very unknowingly, like the Matrix movie, you know. You don't know that you are in the Matrix. It is something like this, and therefore I just mentioned it. If you want to know more about what I just summarized, these are the books. If you are in India, you can purchase those only, you know, to be mailed to Indian address, but I don't think there are many here who are living in India. But if your friends are, you can just forward this information. If you are in North America or anywhere outside India, this is how the book's cover would look like on Amazon, and you can get it from Amazon. Now, NyayaDarshana and all darshanas, what is the word darshana? It means to see, right? Simple. Like we say that in the go to the mandir and darshana of a murti, right? So it is to see, it is to experience, and you say, yeah, it's there. I mean, you know, you just actually look at the murti and do the namaskar, right? So you know where to even look. It's also in the sense of experiencing it, okay, as opposed to imagining it. And so now the question we ask is, how do we know of anything? Forget the past for a minute. How do we know of anything? The English term is epistemology, how our knowledge grows, how we know of it, how do we know, how do we dissect between what different information we get, how do we decide this one seems to be the right information? And NyayaDarshana, just like modern science, comes into the picture. For example, because your group is also Itihasa Shrunkala group, suppose we go only 400 years ago, and if you want to know about whether Shivaji was really it happened or not, I don't think there would be many here on this talk or even otherwise who would doubt the existence of Shivaji. But remember, if I really drill them down, you will quickly realize that we don't doubt it, not because we have some solid evidence. We don't doubt it because on Shraddha, and we have been told about Shivaji in a certain fashion for multiple times. But in a very hard realist way, the modern science way or a NyayaDarshana way, if you go and look for, okay, so tell me now, what is the evidence for the existence of Raja Shivaji? Well, we will say there is a, oil paintings of Raja Shivaji. There are paintings based on his biographical life, like, different wars he fought. There are statues of his around, and so on. But guess what? Just for example, because many of our Indians are also, brainwashed enough to think of Ramakrishna, they might have been existed, not. But suddenly we give somebody else, and then we say, Socrates was definitely there. Based on what? So my point is, we get some evidence. We have to find a way to test that evidence. That's why pratyaksha and anumana, that pratyaksha is objective testing. Okay. And we can draw some inferences, and inferences is all that we have. And we build a scenario which is more likely versus less likely. For example, this is a picture of Alexander. Okay. Alexander the Great. Now forget whether the great or not, because I don't want to get into that argument. This is a painting of Jesus Christ. This is the statue of Socrates. This is the statue of Euclid, okay, and Hipparchus. Now, if you go and ask, forget somebody else. If I ask you, what do you think? Were these real individuals? You don't have to give the answer, but instead you think, yeah, they were real individuals. What if I add these two and think, you say Krishna, of course he was there, and Rama, he was there. But take this into your social circles, even I'm saying Indian social circles, and ask them. And the most likely you'll get the answer is, except Rama and Krishna, these were real people. Rama, Krishna, yeah, maybe they were there, maybe not, who knows? And then we start justifying, well, how does it matter? Their message matters, how their life they lived matters, and so on. Well, this is justification. Okay, NyayaDarshana says there is no need for justification. It's perfectly okay to say, I don't know. Okay, but with evidence we can establish. So some of the lessons learned from some of the contemporary issues that we see is that the purely textual narrations without objective evidence can lead to a blind faith. I'm not saying it always leads to blind faith, but can lead to blind faith. Tomorrow, if somebody writes a book, another guru pops up and he writes a book and he says, hey, you are my disciple, now believe this. That can happen because it's there in some book. Now, we will see the role of a guru. We are not denying the role, okay? But ultimate onus is left on the individual who is absorbing the knowledge, not even on the person who is giving it. Biggest contribution of NyayaDarshana is that no claim is intrinsically valid, okay? This is not to say start a fight with everyone when somebody says something, but intrinsically somebody just cannot say, because it is written in some book, because somebody's guru, my guru is saying this, or somebody is saying it, therefore accept it. Nah. Now Arunaji explained that this is considered a astika darshana, meaning NyayaDarshana accepts into Ishvara, also accepts the authority of the Veda. But how come it's saying this no claim is intrinsically valid? Because it demands the pratyaksha. That is true for all darshanas. Even Shankaracharya, I say even Shankaracharya because many people attach a totally wrong interpretation to Adi Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya is also saying, what is his famous, he has many famous quotes, but one is Jnanam na Purusha Tantram, Kintu Vastu Tantram. The knowledge doesn't depend on somebody's opinion. In fact, it should not. It depends on the very substance about which you are trying to know. Now, he also says there are certain areas. For example, we know that, like, is there a life after death? Okay, what about the Punarjanma? Does it exist? If it exists, how exactly it takes place? How this karma balance goes into the next world and comes into this, right? What happens to that consciousness after something goes on? What happened to us before we came into being here? These are some of the questions which are not easily amenable to objective testing, the hard realist testing that a NyayaDarshana would love to do. And in that case, we can take help of other people's experiences from other fashion. For example, Patanjali in Yoga Sutra, he says, if you follow a certain type of samadhi, like dhyana dharana samadhi, get certain level of purification, he doesn't say there is a guarantee, but if that happens, there's a very good chance you will know about your past births. Now, in that case, we have only two choices. Either we follow that and try to see if we get that experience, or we can trust the experience of someone that we trust that individual, and therefore we trust the experience that he or she is narrating. But main position of NyayaDarshana is no claim is intrinsically valid. Therefore, what it means is when somebody is making 5 claims, you have a right to accept 2 and reject 3. Never ever feel burdened that either one has to accept the wholesale everything or not. Okay, that's the beauty. And that's also you will see in the modern science too. Okay. Context is provided by the empirical, hard, objectively testable evidence. That is the basis of it. One must seek highly improbable, highly empirical evidence predicted by highly implausible theories. And again, you will see NyayaDarshana coming closer to modern science. Ancient Indian narratives, especially when you look at the empirical evidence, provides a great depository for highly improbable observations and predictions. Guess what? Modern science does the same. In evolution, we have wonderful predictions, and some of the predictions have come out true, like the genetics, for example. In quantum mechanics, I mean, that's like a huge depository, whatever you want. And that almost brings us back to, like, quantum mechanics brings us back to the experiences people have in samadhi and whatnot, right? So huge repository for improbable observations and improbable predictions. Therefore, it's a gold mine, even a gold shop for people who are looking to do some interesting things. All right, let's go fast. Do you have what it takes? We need 3: Shraddha, Samshaya, and Jidnyasa. That's what Bhagavad Gita is saying. The Samshaya of a mind is a bad one, but Samshaya of a buddhi is very much required. That gives you Jnana Trupti. Shraddha is very important. Shraddha can be of a multiple different kinds: Sattva, Raja, Tama. The Sattva is desired, Tama is not. In either case, it can lead to a huge Karma Shakti. Then the third important thing is Jidnyasa is required. You cannot outsource any of these things. Anytime we outsource this thing, our comprehension is affected. Jidnyasa cannot be just idle curiosity like a kutula. It has to be saprayojan, which is to say, if you ask a question to someone, or if you're asking a question to yourself, you consider that as a problem to be solved, you should also be able to answer, if you solve that problem, what is the benefit? Saprayojan. Otherwise, don't do it. I mean, our time is limited. Okay. Phala prapti. And the bottom left-hand corner is undesired. The top right-hand corner is a desired one. This is our Shad Darshanas. There are more Darshana, like a Lokayata, Charvaka, and all that are considered like a Nastik Darshana. Again, I will not spend time on this, but just so that you understand, the Astik and Nastik, the way these words are used, it doesn't mean Nastik means the one who doesn't believe in God or Ishvara, and Astik means one who believes in the God. This is used only in the sense of their reliance on the Vedic literature. Even the Veda, when they say use the word Veda, many times it is understood only in the sense of 4 Vedas, Rigveda, Yajurveda. No, Veda in the sense of Agama, in the sense of established knowledge. So for example, if you're talking of Ayurveda, Veda, the word Vedyo itself means to know, right? And Veda means knowledge, therefore know and knowledge. So if for any discipline, a established knowledge is a Veda. Okay. Also, we have to understand that broader definition, and therefore they use different words. Sometimes they use the word Shabda, sometimes they use the word Agama, and so on. And that is for that reason. That is the established knowledge in that field. So these are the 6 ones. There are some specific rishis who are assigned or attributed, who possibly originated or synthesized in a scientific fashion. And then, of course, there are many books in each of these 6 Nyaya. We are going to, 6 Darshana. We are going to talk about the Nyaya. Quickly, why? Why do we want to understand Nyaya Darshana or how it is used? To inquire, to know the truth, to innovate, to identify causal connections, Karya Karana Bhav, to uncover, eliminate, minimize error, expose sophism, expose fraud. That's why I said it's a hard realist. Okay. That's why know the truth, eliminate the error, expose the fraud. How does NyayaDarshana aims to do it? By becoming expert in these 16 categories of these elements. It calls it dravya. Okay. Pramana, prameya, samshaya, prayojana, drishtanta, siddhanta, avayava, tarka, nirnaya, vada. Up to that point is something that you learn, and it is to be applied because that's a good thing. And then it gives additional like 6 more. These are to be also learned because the person with a bad intention, wrong intention, or incompetence will naturally jump into it, and you don't want to jump into it, but you also want to identify when somebody else does and point it out. Okay, those are what? Jalpa, Vitanda. Vitanda is some everybody knows. Not everyone knows Jalpa and Hetvabhas, but Vitanda. Don't do Vitanda. Vitandavad, we have heard. That is that Vitanda. Jalpa, Vitanda, Hetvabhasa, Chala, Jati, Nigrasthana. And there are specific rules, and we will briefly talk about this. So this is how we are going to do it, via attaining supreme felicity expertise in 16 categories of Nyaya. And what is the outcome? We should always want to know, what am I going to get if I do this, right? This is the identification of best in class claims in anything. Okay, best medicine, best school to study, best company to work for, whatever you, best place to live, yeah, whatever you want to do it. Reduction and elimination of errors, identification of fraudulent claims, prevalence of Nyaya principles among researchers and Dharma activists is what could be the good outcome. But you cannot say, oh, okay, this is the area of the experts, researchers who do it. No, because when the researchers or experts disagree on certain point and they have 2 points of view, it comes down to every person who is listening to it or every person who is interested in it. That's why everyone should become at least aware of what these things are. Okay. Here is a painting. We don't, of course, have photography before 1826. Okay, so it's only painting imagined by someone coming in some traditional sense. This is considered painting of Gautama. Of course, remember there are many Gautamas, so we don't know which Gautama was connected. Akshapada, I mean, that was in the name, but even there also we will go into many issues, such as a son of a Vasishtha is also considered Vasishtha, and son of a Vishwamitra is also considered Vishwamitra. Even a disciple of Vasishtha can be considered Vasishtha. So there are many such variations. Anyways, so the sage Gautama, and by the way, this is very old. In terms of these Shad Darshanas, you will see them referred to directly and indirectly everywhere. Definitely in Ramayana, definitely in Puranas, definitely in the Mahabharata. So definitely is more than 14,000 years old, that I can say with a confidence. Okay, so these are those categories. Now let's look at the logic of modern scientific discovery. And then we will again try to connect it with various shades of Indian knowledge system, including different darshanas. Okay, so how these they are complementary in nature. And so I'm going to start with what is considered modern science. Now, Sir Karl Popper defines the modern science. If you look at this central triangle, he says it is a triangulation. Now, keep these words in mind. It is the triangulation of explanation, prediction, and testing. So prediction is that inference and prediction, anumana, and testing is the pratyaksha, what we will call, or objective testing. It's a triangulation of explanation, prediction, testing in the context of a theory. And when we say in the context of a theory, there is some problem that we want to solve. To solve the problem, we have proposed a theory. So in the context of a theory and in the context of a background knowledge. The theory tells you what evidence you should look for. And once you define the theory, once you find the evidence, it tells you what kind of background knowledge you need to objectively test it. Okay, so that's the context, and that's it, brings it together. Now let's see some shades of it in the context of Darshana tradition. Professor C.K. Raju, if you have heard the name, he has written a very small, nice book, Is Science Western in Origin? And this is not about the fight between East or West or who had the primacy on the science. Everyone has added to this knowledge base, to the methodology base. But it's very, I mean, I was fascinated, and I don't think I'm capable of conveying that fascination, what I found in NyayaDarshana in the context of modern science, because I'm fascinated by modern science. And so what I found is actually what is there in modern science, but a lot more. But I will just leave it at that. But let's do some very crude comparison. One of the word, if you would have noticed before here, the number, let's see, number 7, it says avayava, okay, members of syllogism. And those avayava is what I'm going to show you. So now approach is very similar, not always identical. And that's what sometimes confuses the people. But NyayaDarshana will say that it will use the 2 words. It's like swarthanuman, meaning when you as a researcher do something, you might do it in an ad hoc way. Actually, all the research takes place in that fashion. You don't know what to expect from a specific piece of evidence. But once you understood something, now time comes to explain it to others. And that is called, I mean, swarthanuman and now pararthanuman, now explaining it to others, convincing others. And how do you do it? And the approach that Gautama tells us in NyayaDarshana is that avayava, pancha avayava, pratidnya, hetu, udaharana, upanaya, nigamana. Now, I mapped it on what we consider the modern scientific framework. I also added few words, if you notice there, okay? Prameya, Shabda, Upaman, Anuman, Pratyaksha, Agama. So Gautama explains the avayava. He also says how the pramana works. And he know how what he says? He says Pratyaksha. Now, if you focus on the triangle in the middle, Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Shabda, Pramanani. So the whole of modern science, the basic structure of modern science, Gautama is covering in one sutra out of like whatever the few hundred sutra we have in NyayaDarshana. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Shabda, Pramanani. Remember, he's a hard realist. We are looking at the objects. We want to know this thing. So therefore, Nyaya goes with Vaisheshika. Think of Vaisheshika as a physics, and NyayaDarshana is that method to understand the world. Okay. So Sankhya is like classifying anything. Okay, not just hard objects, classification, and that goes with a Yoga Sutra. So Sankhya and Yoga kind of together, Vaisheshika Nyaya are together, and Purva Mimamsa, Uttar Mimamsa are together. Of course, they all six are together, but those are kind of the pairings. Okay, so this is the method. Now, let's look at Patanjali. Patanjali making slight modification for his purposes. You know, what does he say, Pramana? He says, Pratyaksha Anumana Agamah Pramanani. Now, why is that? Remember, there the objective is almost opposite. It's not like a contradictory, but almost opposite of what is there in a NyayaDarshana. NyayaDarshana wants to know, just like Vaisheshika, wants to know. Yato abhyudaya nishrayasa siddhi sadharma. Attaining prosperity in the Niti framework is dharma. Okay, prosperity. So it's a different purpose. Now here in the Yoga Sutra, you want to what? Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Now you're working on your mind. Okay, that's what I mean by they are complementary and they're not contradictory, but we must understand what they're trying to achieve. So in this case, look, there is no so much emphasis on explanation or how it happens. Like, for example, after doing certain thing, Patanjali says, if you do so and so, you may have knowledge of your past births. Okay. Now, the interesting question is, somebody will say, okay, I had a knowledge, I saw that, and internally I felt that that is me in the past life and so on. But now you go for explanation as to say, how did I come to know? Well, that is out of scope in the Yoga Sutra. You will not find the answer to that. It says, if you do this, like follow that Agama text, just like driving a car. Many of us may not know exactly how the things to work, but there is a manual, and that says if this light comes, go there, check this cable, check that cable, tighten that cable, and see if the signal goes off. If it doesn't, go and see a technician. But if it goes, feel good and start driving again. It's something like this. Okay. So now he's saying only Pratyaksha, Anumana, Agama, because you are going to do this practice. You are going to, this is your personal experience that, yeah, you actually saw it. You will not able to take a photo of it and show it to someone. And therefore, because you have a Agama text, which is a Yoga Sutra, for example, it says if you do something, you might have a knowledge of something. And this is not some occult practice. For example, he's saying, Bhuvane Sanyam, I mean, Surya Sanyamat Bhuvana Jnanam. If you do Sanyam, which is what Dhyana Dharana Samadhi together on the Surya, not just staring at a sun, that means like studying in a truly scientific fashion the sun's movement, you get the knowledge of the earth. Very interesting, right? Do you know why? Because sun is responsible for the change of seasons. Chandre Tara Vihad Jnanam. If you focus on the moon, you'll get the knowledge of the celestial sphere. And Dhruve Tad Gati Jnanam. If you focus on a Dhruva, how interesting is that? You will understand all the movements, all the interesting movements that you are not even aware. So it's a very, very pragmatic approach. But my point is the focus is on just following the text and get that experience. Not so much thinking. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. That's why these other things are not there. Krishna is saying to Uddhava, just looking at one piece of pramana is not enough, but many times this is how we are wrongly educated. Just listen to Guru. If it is said somewhere, just follow. None of the Indian tradition, the Darshana tradition, Adhyatmic tradition, Tattvajnana tradition tells this. Okay, there are certain instances when you can simply listen to someone. Why just Guru? I mean, if we go to a mechanic with our car and we are not good in mechanical stuff, then that person says you need to spend $400 and get this done. What do? We trust the person and say, okay, go ahead, do it. right? So it doesn't have to be a guru. It's an expertise, that's what we are referring to. Then you are taking certain risk, but yeah, I mean, what is your choice, guys? I mean, just go and learn how to repair your car. I mean, you have to take certain chances. In that sense, it's okay. But otherwise, no, we are never prevented from having our personal experience. In fact, Bhagavatam is very emphatic. You know what it says? It says, with a pratyaksha and anuman, okay, pratyaksha and anuman, atmaya guru atmaya purushasya visheshata, a specialty of a human being. Atmaiva Guru Ratmaiva Purushasya Visheshata Yat Pratyaksha Anumanabhyam Shreyo Savana Vindate. With Pratyaksha Anuman, you can be your own guru. That is what Bhagavad Puran is telling you. Here, Krishna, again in Bhagavad Puran, another place, he's saying to have a rounded knowledge, you need to not only do triangulation, you need to do quadrangulation. Now, it's not saying necessarily anything more than modern science, but he's refining one additional aspect. He says, Shruti Pratyaksham Aitiyam Anumanam Chatushtayam Pramaneshu Anavasthanat Vikalpat Savirajyate. So before you want to know the truth of something, combine these all four, Shruti or Smruti. Now Taittiriya Aranya replaces Shruti with Smruti. Otherwise, the whole shlok is the same. Okay, Anuman Pratyaksha we know. Aitiya, what does that mean? Aitiya, we think of as Aitiyas, and that's correct. But why is it given to us? So that we get a guidance. We don't have to make the same mistakes. The idea is an experiential knowledge, and that is a very correct definition. In fact, Gandhiji used to teach that in his ashram. Okay, you may have a disagreements with Gandhiji. I do have my disagreements, but he's right on the money when he defined itihas, at least. Now, he may not have learned from it, but he rightly defined itihas in idea in the sense of experiential knowledge of our ancestors. And that is what is meant here, and therefore the background knowledge. All right. So I'm just giving you some shades of it. Let's look at some quick illustration. So theories and their statements. Okay. I'm going to make a whole full list here. And if you notice, I have inserted 2 theories of mine. The point is, when we make a statement of a theory, one of the 5 things, avayava, it should be very straightforward, clean, and crisp. For example, Ptolemy's theory, this is long words, but he simply said Earth is at the center. What did Copernicus said? Sun is at the center. What did Kepler say? The orbits are not circular, but they are elliptical. Okay, what did Maxwell said? He said the electrical waves are same as light waves. Speed is same, everything same. What is my theory of Mahabharata? All astronomy descriptions of Mahabharata text are actual descriptions of the sky of Mahabharata times. Same thing with Ramayana, of Ramayana times, Ramayana descriptions. What is Einstein's theory of gravity? Theory of relativity. The massive objects cause distortion in space-time, which is felt as a gravity. What does Newton say? If there are 2 inertial objects, there will be attractive force. The theory is something that you should be able to state very simply, very crisply, and very clean fashion. Very important. Why is that? Because that allows the growth. That allows the growth of knowledge. Again, NyayaDarshana makes that point very, very clear. I'm not, just to not complicate, I'm not pulling specific sutra, but just to show you, there can be tons of criteria as to decide which theory is better than another theory and why. And this is the progress in cosmology. If you look at last 2000 years in Western science, Western Europe, Ptolemy attributed the Earth at the center. And yes, it was a working model. It was helping people predict the positions of the planets for whatever reason they needed for navigations and for astrology and whatnot. But then Copernicus came in and he said, you know what? If we put sun in the center, it's actually easier. And what was that easier part? Not many people know. Think of the assumption number 4, the epicycles. By the time of Copernicus, this Ptolemy model has become so cumbersome. There were some 70 plus epicycles to predict the movements of like 5 to 7 planets. Go figure. When Copernicus took this Earth from the center to Sun at the center of the solar system, suddenly it did not eliminate, but all the epicycles, many of the epicycles simply vanished, and he could do with 34 of those. Plus, he could explain many other things. For example, I have highlighted, he could explain the phases of the Venus. We come to Kepler, something very interesting that happened. Not many people realize it. People give credit to Newton, and it should be given. But Kepler, notice what is the biggest thing he has done here? Epicycles, gone. With his theory, the epicycles is gone. And why I'm saying this kind of tells you that you are on the right track. Again, NyayaDarshana guides you. NyayaDarshana principles which are modern science principles, they guide you. And the gravity, what happened with the gravity? Something better, the accuracy is better. Now we can make predictions, because if you come to number 10 and 11, what do you find is, before Newton, they could explain things, but they could not make predictions. That is to say, they could not put the constraints. Okay, they can possibly say why Mars is here, or they can possibly predict, but they could not put a constraint or explain why that is happening. Newton's theory could do that, but not everything. Okay, Newton did some more things, and Einstein added further. Okay, but is that the end of it? No. If you look at number 12, you will see that there are always something that is unexplained, and frankly, that leads to growth of knowledge. Okay, with that, let's apply this to Mahabharata, and we will stop. It is the theory that describes what we can observe. Now, Albert Einstein said it, but I will encourage you to read NyayaDarshana to see, not necessarily exactly said it this fashion, but in a slightly modified fashion. NyayaDarshana says the same thing. It is the theory that describes what we can observe. Okay, so that's what tells us what right pramana should be used. Okay, so let's taking Mahabharata again. Remember the 5 avayava, or 5 elements of modern science. So we have the criteria, we have the desired criteria. This is my answer to against that 5 desired criteria. And what I'm doing here is, there are some in the Mahabharata 130 plus different researchers with those many, more or less those many different claims, going from like a 480. Like, believe it, some people think Mahabharata happened 400 CE. Now, when they say happened, they mean it was written, like Professor Hopkins now 100 years ago at Harvard. But the Indian inferiority complex is such that you hear the name Professor Hopkins and Harvard in a one line, you say, yeah, could be true. Okay, that is our problem, because we don't read our darshanas. But I'm saying the consistency of the Mahabharata researchers, I have not given any specific name, and I have made a very short summary in the last column. Any one of the 130 of Mahabharata researchers you pick, what you will, and ask them, what is the statement of your theory? Using that, you determine the date of Mahabharata. They will not able to say it, or if they said it, then you test it. Is it generic? Is it universal? You will find it's not. Okay. One of the importance of, one of the requirement of a theory in this modern science or in a NyayaDarshana tradition is that it should be testable, because that is the only time when we can use the pramana, pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, shabda pramana. Then the evidence, is it just cherry picking, or is it consistent? Then could you able to objectively test it? If not, NyayaDarshana doesn't like it. That's why it says no claim is intrinsically valid unless evidence, it's like 4.2.29, pramanas tasyartha pratipatte. The things are established by evidence. Without evidence, you might have heard Hitchens' razor, Christopher Hitchens. He says any claim made without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Essentially, this NyayaDarshana statement is saying that 4.2.29, pramana tasyartha pratipatte. The next one, 4.2.30, is similar to, but actually better than the other fallacy many people get into, absence of evidence. They think, therefore, evidence of absence. That's not true. You know what NyayaDarshana says? NyayaDarshana says, no, if you want to say that something did not exist, it cannot be established by evidence, or it cannot be established by non-evidence. In fact, non-existence of something cannot be established. Okay, that's, which is like absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, but actually something more. All right, I'll just go fast through this. So one example, number of you would have seen this. I extracted those evidence that I talked about. Then you have to classify. Now this gets into scientific acumen. These scientific acumen or Vijnana Buddhi, you can classify them as the 11 elements. Typically in Darshan Shastra, they are classified into 11 elements like Nishchay, Pruthakkaran, Vargikaran, Mahatva Mapan or Taratamya, a sequencing, which is what? Anukram, Sahacharya, Indriya Pramanya, Sanshay, Indriya Bhram, Karyakarana Bhav. Okay, and finally of course the Nishchay, what you want to do, and Ekikaran, the unification. Okay, so these are some of the 11 elements it talks about. One of them here is a classification. You just don't look at the evidence and start testing it and thinking you have got some answer. How immature would be that? That is given in the Vijnana Buddhi, not just limited to NyayaDarshana, all our darshanas. Everyone, I assume everyone knows Arundhati Vasishta. If not, just a quick summary. This is one fascinating observation in Mahabharata. What it says, at the time of Mahabharata, Arundhati was ahead of Vasishta. In our times, it is not. Vasishta is ahead. It's going from right to left. This is my what do you call movement of praise and celebration. So I spent 15 years, 2000 until 2009, from 1995 working on this. And what I showed is, astronomically, actually it is the fact that there was a 5,000 year, 6,000 year time period between 11,000 and 4,500 BC, when in between the Arundhati was walking ahead of Vasishta, as it is stated in Mahabharata, which means, now remember, now we have to bring the Nyaya, which is a logic, Tarka Shastra, and Arunaji mentioned many other names for it. Bringing this together, that tells us that if that Vyasa statement is correct, then Mahabharata can only happen between these two dates. So that's all we can say. But how did I arrive at 5561 BC? Based on enormous evidence from the Mahabharata text. So 300 plus evidence. And every time you go through this Pancha Avayava and arrive at a certain solution. Every time you don't come to 5561 BC, sometimes you just come approximate. Sometimes you know about a specific day of 5561 BC. Sometimes it's a specific month, and so on and so forth. Okay, and based on that, so this is Arundhati observation, then Bhishma Nirvana observations, many other observations. You start combining. Remember, I said Anukram, there is a method to madness, the sequence in which you do it. But there is also a Sahacharya. Sometimes you combine the evidence and it can give you something magical. Like the Bhishma Nirvana evidence, when combined with the phases and positions of the moon for 18 days of the war, these are all references for the phases and positions of the moon, 30 plus, from the 18 days portion of the Mahabharata war. This takes you to another tighter interval, and just I'll show you here. For example, you arrive at 1600 years time interval. What it is telling you with a supreme confidence that Mahabharata war cannot be any time after 5000 BC, cannot be any time before 6700 BC. And of course, still we are left with 200 plus evidence just purely from astronomy. If you do that, it takes you to 5561 BC. All right. I don't know if you have seen this evidence before, but I'll just quickly go through it, highlight, and maybe then if we have a time, I will do this in a question answer session, depending on the interest. But the Mahabharata evidence is also true for Ramayana evidence. It's like a puzzle. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, like a crossword puzzle. And therefore, I'm showing you this metaphor. You might have played this game, like 7 squares with the 20 sticks. We used to play with a matchbox. If somebody asks you to convert this into 5, that is the puzzle. Okay, you can remove any 3 and you have to reapply them meaningfully and convert them into 5 squares of the same size. I'll not, because we are not making this interactive, otherwise I'll give some time. I'll give you the answer. So if you remove these 3, now some of you might have thought, oh, this is not my piece of, this is not my cup of tea. I don't know how to do it. I don't like puzzles. Some people will take some time and solve it. Other people will not able to solve it. Some people will say it's impossible. That's exactly what people have said about Mahabharata, Ramayana, and Rigveda. Okay, some people say, oh, we don't need to even find the date of Mahabharata. Others says, well, it can be only found out approximately, and so on and so forth. And they could have been right. The fact is, the evidence is such that actually we get a very precise answer. So this is the answer. So now those 3 are gone. So the structure will look like this. We reapply those 3 meaningfully, and now we get 5 square. The reason I'm showing this is that's how Mahabharata evidence is. But in Mahabharata, actually it is said like that. So when the Grantha was ready, Vaishampayan or Shaunak or Romaharshan Sauti is describing Mahabharata, right in the Mahabharata, because these are 4 or 5 recensions. He's saying, how does this Grantha look? He says that Grantha looked like this. Grantham Granthi Tada Chakre Munir Gudam Kutuhalat. A Grantha filled with twist, filled with curiosities, and filled with mysteries. And what are some of those mysteries? They can be seen everywhere, just like that mystery of Arundhati. Why Arundhati is walking ahead? And is it even possible? Many great astronomers, both inside India, outside India, said this is impossible in the very order of nature. But by luck, we could show that that is not the case. Actually, it happens. Same thing you can find people say, oh, this is impossible. Because say Saturn to go through around the earth through 27 nakshatra, it takes 30 years. Mahabharata describes Saturn in 4 or 5 different places. It says, for example, here it says Bhagam Nakshatra Makramya Surya Putrena Pidate. The Saturn is afflicting Bhaga Nakshatra 8 and 9. Mars is okay because Mars goes in a like 2 years period, completes one circle. So let's look at Saturn alone. Or Jupiter also takes 12 years. But Jupiter is described near Nakshatra Shravan. Magha Swangarako Vakra Shravanecha Bruhaspati. Okay, the Mars is shown everywhere, not a big deal, but it's a very beautiful evidence of a Mars. And Mars seems to be the magic one. Even Kepler proposed his theory based on a discrepancy of the Mars. For me, to define 5561 BCE, Arundhati Vasishta, Bhishma Nirvan, Saturn, and Jupiter helped me. But finally, what really helped me score 5561 BCE was the super rich evidence of Mars, like 8+ specific descriptions. I'll not go into all of them. But look at Saturn is described near 8 and 9. Again, in the same Mahabharata, Saturn is described near 12. Samvatsaras Thainancho, Graho Prajulito Ubho, Vishakhayo Samipasto. Vishakha is that number 12 nakshatra. Brahaspati Shaneshcharo. Okay. Then guess what? That Saturn is afflicting number 28, Rohini Nakshatra. Even Jupiter is afflicting number Rohini number Nakshatra 28. So Jupiter you can see in 3 places. Saturn you can see in 3 places. How is that possible? That is the puzzle. And I mean, we are not going to solve the puzzle. Like in, Velianad, now Arunaji would know. Velianad, I taught a 5-day-long Mahabharata astronomy workshop. This was 2 years ago or so. And even after 5 days, people were engaged and very excited. But even after 5 days, we had not done justice to Mahabharata evidence. So naturally not possible in a hour's time here. Lot of evidence. What you will find is, remember that pratyaksha of a NyayaDarshana, like literally if it says something, does it really happen? I mean, you can see, I mean, you can take my book. Now the book doesn't show everything, but some videos and whatnot together with the book, you will see that, or at least you can test it if you're interested, taking astronomy software and a book in a hand and see what I'm saying, does that happen? So for example, Shukra, and that's true for all of this I'm saying, but I have discussed those, so I'm talking Shukra. The Shukra is near 22, 23. So 22 is Purva Bhadrapada. Like, it's difficult to write the name, so I have given the numbers with Mrugashirsha as number 1. And 23 is Uttara Bhadrapada. Mahabharata times, do you know what it says? Vyasa is saying, it says, Shukram Proshtapade Purve Samaruya Vishampate. Shukra came to Purva Bhadrapada. Uttaretu Parikramya Sahita Pratyudikshite. It turned to the north, made a full parikrama, and then it went further. If you do the simulation or if you do the mathematical astronomy calculations in 5561 BC, of course, plus minus 1 year, because these planets cannot be in one place or different places at the same time, especially Venus and Mars. And the puzzle of Jupiter and Saturn, because they cannot move much, is very different. You can actually see Venus making a parikrama, which is going in retrograde exactly near Purva Bhadrapada, Uttara Bhadrapada. Or anytime you see R, that's a retrograde. Like here, number 10, where Mars you see. Do you know how Mahabharata describes? Again, from a NyayaDarshana perspective, if it describes something, you should be able to see it. Pratyaksha. Okay. It says Dhruvam Prajwalitam Ghoram. This is not the Dhruva pole star. It is getting fixed. Dhruvam Prajwalitam Ghoram. Okay. It's like shining very brightly. That's what they do when they go retrograde. Apasavya Pravartate. It's going in the ulta direction, Apasavya. Abnormal, ab to normal, whatever it is, which is going backward. Apasavya Pravartate. Chitra Swatantare Chaiva Dishtita Parushagra. That way it was doing between Chitra and Swati. Those are number 10, 11. If you do that for 5561 plus minus 1 year, you're exactly going to see Mars doing that. That's the beauty of empirical evidence. That's the beauty of modern science. That's the beauty of NyayaDarshana. And there are 35 plus additional observations. Now the question comes, somebody says, but I don't understand astronomy. Well, tough luck. Okay. So then you have to take it on a Shraddha. Okay. And then if you put your trust in the right person, then you are lucky. But if you put your trust in the wrong person, then you are unlucky. That is the risk you have to take if you're not willing to study. But in addition, people may ask, okay, that's just based on astronomy. Can we find from other things? And that's what I was referring to as the growth of knowledge and NyayaDarshana. NyayaDarshana is never willing to say that this is the final answer. It says, well, can we know more? And the NyayaDarshana approach is also such, which is the approach of modern science, that a good theory leads to additional questions of higher complexity. In fact, that is exactly what happened with the Ptolemy to Copernicus to Kepler to Galileo to Newton, Einstein. Yes, they solved the problem. It increased our confidence, but their new theories led to more problems of higher complexity. And did they actually succeed in solving those higher problems? Yes, they did. Okay, that's why that sequence, after Copernicus came Kepler, and after Kepler came Newton, and then Einstein, Maxwell, and whatnot. But remember, Einstein is not possible without Newton, and Newton is not possible without Kepler. So it's not to take credit away from anyone. So that's how the knowledge gets built. And again, NyayaDarshana and even other Darshan Shastras talk about it. So in last 10 years, this is what has happened. I started with astronomy, but many other fields of science, the evidence is supporting that 5561 BC. I want to end on this note, and then I'll quickly summarize in 1 minute. This is a wonderful quote from Vinoba Bhave. It's very important to realize many times we will take something that's very opposite and we fight why that is wrong and why we are right. And that's perfectly okay. Sometimes it makes sense. On the other hand, this is a quote worth reading and even remembering and reading multiple times. In the field of thought, you have more often to refute the theories of those nearer to you than those more remote. Shankaracharya did not refute the atheist so much as he refuted Sankhyavada. Okay, that is one of the darshana, Sankhya Darshan, which is closer to his theory. Now, many people don't realize that Sankhya Vad or Sankhya Darshan is very close to Vedanta Darshan. There are differences, of course, otherwise we would have called it by the same name. So he refuted Sankhyavada, which is very closer to his theory. That is because what is close to us differs from us only in some small detail. Thus, there is a greater probability of being misled. So the closest ideas have to be formulated and defended first and defeated if required. Later, it does become quite clear as to where the real point of difference is. So many times our homework starts right where we are. Okay, so we know the principle, we know the Daivi Pravritti of Bhagavad Gita, and then how many of we follow. And you know what? There will always be a gap. That's what NyayaDarshana will say, or modern science says. There will always be a gap in our knowledge. Similarly, there can be always a gap between what the Daivi Pravrittis are versus what we actually practice. And that's perfectly fine, because that's a reality. That will always be a reality. But at least we should try to eliminate the contradictions. And that is the context of this here. Quick summary. Darshan Shastra is a way of experiencing Tattva Jnana. Bhagavad Gita says that Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam. Okay. Actually, I came to know this. I mean, I knew this verse by heart, and I never made a sense out of this until I would say a couple of years ago. Someone from Gujarat was stating that, and he was saying this very casually. I forgot his name now. He's a Darshana expert. And I said, wow, how come it never occurred to me? You know, so the surprises are there. Only when we think we know something, there is a whole ocean that opens up in front of us. Darshan Shastra are complementary to each other. They are not contradictory, although they may appear like this. Darshan Shastra emphasize Pratyaksha. And Pratyaksha is the same as experience, or at least similar as experience, similar as empirical. That's what connects that modern science with the Darshana Shastra, not just NyayaDarshana, by the way. NyayaDarshana, most important contribution, no claim is intrinsically valid. Only you can establish it via evidence. Things can be established by evidence. No thing can be established by either evidence or non-evidence, which is absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and something more. You know, I don't have a time to explain the subtlety of it. A person participating in debate, that's why everyone should know this, with the appendages of fallacies, quibbles, futilities, and points of defeat, is to be declared as defeated. But who is going to declare it? Not the other party. No one will believe that, which means the moderators, the judges, and the audience must be knowledgeable to recognize who is right, who is wrong. They should know NyayaDarshana. Observers, judges are worthy of rebuke if they fail to identify and censure the participant engaging in fallacies, futilities, and points of defeat. These are the points I am reading from NyayaDarshana, by the way. These actually almost most of them. And observer judges are worthy, forgive my typo error there, of rebuke if they erroneously accuse the participant of involving in fallacies, futilities, and points of defeat. That's how, you know, the sharp logic is used. Just like the Upanishad says, Shrasya dhara nishita duratteya. It's a double-edged sword, you know. It's not an easy path, something like this. And that's why a what you call expertise, a deep expertise in Nyaya is required for all of us, irrespective of the age, irrespective of what we are doing. And that's where I want to stop. If I went over time, my apologies, Arunaji.
No, I think I would like to hear you more, but we have some restriction of time. And thank you so much, Nilesh ji, for this wonderful, fertile description of our ancient scientist. That's what I put them. We call Dasta. Got NyayaDarshana. We now open for your questions and answers.
Yeah,
So
questions,
if
comments, and
anyone would like,
objections.
yeah, no objection from my side anyway.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Namaste, Nilesh. I have read your book and I've seen your videos and I'm impressed.
Thank
so
you.
thank you very much. Would like to connect with you sometime one-on-one. We had a similar presentation on the antiquity of Mahabharata in this forum about a couple months ago, or maybe 4 months ago. And at that time, we came across some experts indicating between 3000 and 3300 BCE. And then, of course, I brought your point at that time, and now I'm bringing their point to you.
Sure.
And I'm saying that as people who are not experts in this area, and I speak on different subjects, but this is not my area. I feel that is there a forum whereby all you experts can get together and come up with an agreed date for Mahabharata and Ramayana, because they happened and there were no two Mahabharats. There was only one Mahabharata.
Correct.
And you are using very logical in a way, and those people probably are also using it. So my question to you is, have you had an interaction, and has there been a healthy debate about what is the correct time period within 500 years, let's say?
Yeah. No, all that good stuff. By the way, if may I ask, who was the person who gave that lecture, like about 3300 BCE or whatever?
Yeah, Nilesh. Shivram is in a much better position. Yes.
I think we should ask questions related to our topic today. That would be nice.
Yeah. That's fine. Arunaji, still this is related. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Nilesh, just this one. This was I had presented it based on my presentation when I had attended a couple of Dr. Narere Achar's presentations.
Yeah. Okay.
Then I do strongly believe in because I had a lot of personal interaction with him.
Right.
Based on what I had presented, that's what Dilip ji is referring to.
Okay.
So at the time also this topic came saying that there's a I mean, as per my studies, which Kalyan Ramanji, there are more people pointing towards 3000 BC than 5000 among researchers. That's what I had pointed out. Just
Got
to give
it.
the
Yeah, so Narari HR, right? 3067. Okay. So I will
please
ask
the question to related to the today's lecture.
I'm sorry, Nilesh, please you ignore my question because I can take it up later. Arunaji, your point is very well taken. I will take it up with him some other time.
Thank you.
And I just want to compliment you because I have a talk which talks about similarity between the scientific approach and the Vedantic approach.
Okay.
And you gave me a lot more information on that. So thank you very much.
All right.
Hope to be in touch with
very
you
good.
sometime.
And if we have a time, we'll come back to yours because that is at my heart. You can mute all of you, please. Okay. Just Arunaji, I'll quickly I'll quickly add a note before taking the next question, so that I mean, I just don't want to leave everything hanging, since it's something that you had discussed in the past lectures. So if there is a Mahabharata researcher who has a claim for a specific year, I know that person more than likely. Very 99% chance that 100% close to 100% I know the person. 95% confidence I can say that I have interacted with that person. So to answer Dilipji's question in a generic way, and it's somewhat related, I would say, because see, NyayaDarshana is a subject, but then we have to apply it in a real life to all situations. And this is one situation. And frankly, this is the situation I have applied for last 10 years, you know, like this particular case. And so, but to answer this question, like imagine if the kids are fighting, and it's like how reasonable it is to expect that the kids will solve their own problems. NyayaDarshana, again, I'll quote something from NyayaDarshana. So I bring it back to NyayaDarshana. NyayaDarshana says, what is it that leads to error? And so Dilipji would like that also. It says, pravartana lakshana dosha. Okay, only, so I convert this into this fashion. I say, do not trust 100%. I mean, you would have heard this before. It's not my quote. Do not trust 100% of what people say. Only trust 50% of what they do. So that do part, I will say, I encourage every Mahabharata, Ramayana, Rigveda researchers to come and debate openly. Okay.
That's correct.
So far, only 2 people have shown up. One is, of course, for the 3067 date, you know, the Manish Pandit, Dr. Manish Pandit. And it is available on Sangam Talk. Arunaji would have watched it.
Right, oh yeah, I have watched most of the talk.
Right, and so the Dilipji, I don't know if you have watched it, but I will encourage you to go to Sangam Talk, just type Nilesh debate or something, or Vada, you will find that. So that is the best I can do. It's like a kids fighting. Now kids not in the sense of immature, but the dosha, the error or people's unwillingness comes from these 3 dosha. And NyayaDarshana says it says 3 rasham, those 3 rasham. What are those 3? It says raga, dvesha, mudha. Raga, dvesha, moha. Attachment to a specific thing, in this case a specific claim, hate or detestation or aversion to another claim, and lack of intellect or stupidity. These are the words of
That's absolutely correct. Yes, absolutely correct.
Okay,
and,
next question.
So next question, please. Go ahead and ask question. No, let him ask. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please, go ahead. We have our next person.
Okay, understood.
Please, Istarfan.
Any idea why that happens in between? Okay.
I don't know.
So Dilipji, we will connect offline. But if you heard me, like go to Sangam Talks, watch that one. Also, I have a debate with Dr. Konrad Elst done in 2016. So Konrad Elst and Oak, if you type, you will get that also on a YouTube or.
Go ahead.
Can you post your email address?
Nilesh, oh, yeah, this is Jagdish. And so I will talk to you later. I think we have to take your date as well as Narahari Achar, both the dates seriously. And so what I'll talk to you later. And I did PhD in physics actually. And some of my colleagues used to think, oh, I did not use quantum mechanics in my PhD thesis, but I did apply classical mechanics in my thesis. It was in kinetic theory of dense gases. And my PhD advisor is number one, considered number one in the whole world. And he was, his mentor had worked with Einstein. So my one question I have, both the dates we have to consider. And I have to get started with astronomy. I think read the Dover book first and you must be knowing Hamilton-Jacobi equations, right?
Yes, but please get to the question. Okay. Yeah, I'm more of a Gibbs free energy equation guy. But
yeah. So here I'm going to ask you a question. I think Lokmanya Tilak wrote a paper with Jacobi. Is Jacobi same as Hamilton-Jacobi equations? That's one question.
No, it's not.
Oh, so he's different one. Okay.
Different Jacobi. Yeah. Different Jacobi. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think that's what I want to make sure. So
Okay.
I think I'll go through your book another one too.
Very good.
Yeah.
And
So I'll be talking to you.
thank you. Yeah. You
Yeah.
have a question? Another question?
Yeah. Another question is, we want. When I was in India, I read about P.N. Oak's work.
Yeah.
And if you have a reference, I'll get it over there. The peer, like especially he talked about the cognates with all the European.
Yeah.
I have great respect for him. So I think he's your uncle or someone relatives, right?
Distant uncle. 10 generations
Distant
removed,
uncle.
but yeah, distant uncle, right?
So
Oak and Oak.
Yeah.
Quickly
So
let me make a
learn
comment.
Something about his work too, yeah.
Yeah. Let me make a quick comment before we go to the next question. Again, see, remember how the emotions fly. They come to Mahabharata dating, no matter what you talk. This is interesting. Not only we should take these two dates seriously, but in fact, there are 130 different dates. We should take all of them seriously. What is important is to understand. See, this is what happens in the conferences. In fact, my wife said, don't go to any conference. It's a waste of time. And I completely agree with her. So when Dilipji was asking, do we get together? Well, we have got together a few times. Nothing comes out of it. One of the reasons, there are many reasons, but forget about the Mahabharata researchers. See, by virtue of the fact we have come up with these claims, we will be excused if we are so attached to our own claim. But what is required is that the people who are not attached to a specific claim, but interested in the Mahabharata or the true dating of Mahabharata, they have to look at these claims and see which one makes sense. But for example, the statement that you made, and I'm not pointing at you, that is the statement I hear everywhere. And the statement is made in this fashion. For example, just like, Golgappa versus Pani Puri, samajh le. So yeah, so Pani Puri also I also like Golgappa. I also like Aloo Paratha. I also like Muli Paratha. This is not about liking Aloo Paratha versus Muli Paratha. We can enjoy both. Say Aloo Vada, there can be 10 types of Aloo Vada. There can be 15 types of samosas. We are not talking of samosas and we are not talking of Aloo Vadas. We cannot say, artificially, of course, we should respect every Mahabharata researchers because they have done the work. Okay, they have put the effort. But we cannot say, I also respect this guy, I also respect this guy, I also respect his date, I also respect his date. It is the loose talk that NyayaDarshana abhors. NyayaDarshana says, no, stop talking that. Here are the tools. Here are the tools at your disposal, same like a modern science. Put it to the test. And the objective is not to say that this is the ultimate claim. It may not be the ultimate claim, but the objective is always to find out which one is the better claim of the lot and why. So this is not a comment to what you said. In fact, this is such a generic comment that I get everywhere, including conferences, and that will not make progress. We will not able to make progress with thinking that Aloo Vada is also good, this Aloo Vada also like, and that is also nice. They all have made effort. Now let's test it against certain criteria, just like testing a wine and testing a food and what sugar or sweetness index, whatever it is. And the tools are there. Tools are there in modern science. Tools are there in NyayaDarshana. All our Darshana Shastras are more than sufficient to make that decision. Thank you. But thank you very much. And it wasn't a comment directed at you.
One last question. I just read recently, I think this is some marine archaeology or marine work by some British scientists. They say the sediments which flow through Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. So what they say that 5 million years back, all the rivers, including Saraswati, Satluj, they flow to eastward and fell into Ganges.
Not correct. There is no such study. Somebody is saying it. It's a fakery. Yeah.
It's a figure. I see. So that's okay.
It's because there are hundreds of studies on Indian rivers, and they are very, very consistent. What they're telling us. Yeah, this kind of thing that you are saying, I also hear at the conferences, even Saraswati conferences. It comes because it is a mixing of some evidence with our desire, with our dogma. Like we also want the Saraswati in the Prayagraj. Then we again also want the Saraswati in the Gujarat because Gujarat has a Saraswati. And this creates this total chaos, unacceptable to our Darshana Shastra. And those people who do it, and I meet them into these conferences, they are doing a disservice to our Indian civilization. Like the kind of things that you just stated, people are saying, and they will just throw that they found somewhere, they read something. No, no, no. That's why NyayaDarshana says no claim is intrinsically valid until you put to test.
Well, what they are saying is that 5 million years back, they changed the course. They used to fall into the eastward, and then for last 5 million years back, then they are falling into Arabian Sea, including Saraswati.
Understand what they're saying? I will say the Hitchens razor says a claim made without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, right?
I ask you because you have, you know a lot about geology. I don't.
Right. No,
That's
it's not about you knowing or me knowing more or less like that. Even
But
if you
I
don't have
consider
that background,
that's what I was asking you.
even if you don't have the background, we can read the research papers and easily understand what they're trying to say. And there is no research paper like that. Hundreds of research papers on rivers, all rivers, and very, very consistent with what they're saying, including the timing. Thank you. Those are all wonderful questions. Frequently asked questions.
I have one question.
Another person.
Okay. Nilesh, I have a question. 10 years back or so, I watched the PBS show on Mahabharata, and they have shown that they excavated kind of chariot. It was that time in part of Russia. It's close to Afghanistan, and they did some, I think, dating study or something. So, any comment on that? Can't hear.
Cannot hear.
Cannot hear.
Yeah, I'm on the mute. Okay. So let me take an example of that chariot that you are referring to that is found in Russia.
Yes.
And the one that recently we found in India at Sonali, place called Sonali or something, and that is dated to 2000 BC. Again, I'm commenting on what you said, not comment on you or anything. What happens is this. Again, NyayaDarshana is a good one for that, which is to say, someplace we dug, wherever in the world, and we found a chariot, or we found a bow and arrow, we found a sword. Now, we need something to connect that to a specific event. That is what we call the triangulation or quadrangulation. Shruti pratyakshamaytiyam anumanam chatushtayam. So say if something is found in Russia, does any text anywhere says that the Mahabharata war happened in Russia? The answer is no. It says exactly where it happened, Kurukshetra and so on. Then even if suppose we find a chariot in Kurukshetra today, okay, there is no reason to immediately jump to the conclusion that just because we found a chariot in Kurukshetra, it is a Mahabharata chariot. Based on what? I mean, there are chariots in Kurukshetra used before Mahabharata war and after Mahabharata war. So this is what the harsh, sharp logic that NyayaDarshana talks about, or even modern science talks about. So what it essentially says is, we have to limit what we can draw from it. In mathematics, we say the degree of freedom as a concept. If we have got 10 data points, we can get only 10 pieces of independent information out of it, not 11 pieces of information. So if you have found a chariot, in say Sonali chariot, all we can say is that at that location, 2000 years ago, people were using chariots. But if you see the news that came out in many newspapers of India and other places after Sonali also, and same thing must have happened to Russian chariot. What was the news? Mahabharata happened 2000 BC. Why? Because that chariot that they found in place called Sonali was dated to 2000 BC. I mean, how childish and how juvenile is that? All it says is that a chariot was found in 2000 BC in that place. Why we are connecting to Mahabharata as if Mahabharata is the only time there was a chariot? What about when Alexander came and people were fighting? Were there no chariots? Were there no chariots in the Ramayana times? Why not Ramayana? Like Dasharatha, right? So why not Ramayana? So I think that's very juvenile that the newspaper media guys do. Even unfortunately, archaeologists, researchers also do that thing. I mean, I see this day in, day out. So that is the answer to that.
And one more question.
Yeah.
About Arundhati. Why so much importance to Arundhati in our Itihas, particularly at marriage time and at this time, Mahabharata war is going ahead?
Okay, so the why, there is a two questions. Why specific importance to Arundhati during the marriage time? I mean, we can speculate. We can only speculate in the sense of Arundhati and Vasishta, Pativrata, and they are very fixed stars. They don't move much, and Arundhati, for in our times, last 6,500 years, Arundhati is walking behind Vasishta and the Pativrata, great followers. I think that must be the symbolism. But let's talk about the Mahabharata. It's not so much the Arundhati and Vasishta, that's why it's important. Remember at the beginning and also at the end, I said we should look for improbable observations and very unorthodox or unimaginable theories, something that we think impossible in the nature. For example, say 400 years ago, people may have thought, I mean, even all of us would have thought, totally impossible to have a metal object that flies in the sky like a bird, takes 200, 300 people, goes for 8 hours and takes people from one continent to another. I mean, next to impossible to believe such a thing 400 years ago, right? Similarly, just if you bring that wow factor to Arundhati Vasishta, Arundhati, I mean, just some of the theories, for example, many Western Indologists, but even our Indologists used this Arundhati reference to take away the credibility of Mahabharata. They said, look, this kind of thing is there in the Mahabharata. Impossible. What kind of nonsense did these people write? And you believe that this happened, right? S.B. Dikshit looked at it. C.V. Vaidya, Lokmanya Tilak gave him a Bharatacharya as a title. He said, this is something that is inserted by Sauti. Bharat Ratna Panduranga Vaman Kane, Pava Kane, he said, this is impossible in the very order of nature. And therefore, when I was telling you Shraddha, so when I took it, that Shraddha was required. Otherwise, why would I work for it on the 15 years? In reality, I would have failed and I would have said, maybe that is not true. Maybe it's right that somebody inserted it. But I couldn't, just looking at the nature of the observation, something so obvious, I couldn't think of why even a person who might have inserted, what would be his motivation to insert something that is so obviously false, if it is false. So this is an improbable kind of observation. For example, when Newton put the theory of gravity, now that we all praise Newton, we don't know the struggle that Newton went through and the criticism he went through. People used to ask him, your all theory is good, but tell me, where is the rope that connects these inertial bodies so that they can attract each other? And of course, the Newton's famous response is hypothesis non fingo, like I don't pretend to know, but my theory is still right because it is giving correct predictions. So that's what makes this Arundhati Vasishta observation phenomenal, because once I demystified it and showed that actually there was a time when it went ahead, Anilji, that one observation, now we are talking of 130 claims. So just we don't have to look at Professor Achar's claim alone. Out of those 130 claims, just the Arundhati Vasishta observation destroyed, eliminated, falsified 95+% of the claims, including the claim of 3067 BC, because it says if your date is anytime after 4508 BC, it is wrong. If it is before 11,091 BC, it is wrong. That's the power. Just like Einstein's theory was proved by the eclipse observation, that is done in Africa and Brazil, something like that. So Arundhati Vasishta is very similar to that.
Nilesh, on that Arundhati Vasishta, I understand that the binary star system which rotates around each other, Mizor and Alcor. And is that correct from your astronomical? Because they and the way I explain the importance in the marriage shastras is just like Arundhati and Vasishta go around each other. You as a couple, there is no one person who is more important. You look after each other, just as, that, and that's one of the few binary systems which are visible naked eye, where you can see that the two stars are together and they are rotating around or revolving around each other. Is that a good symbolic explanation?
Good symbolic explanation for the marriage, possibly.
Yes.
Not the best one, but good one. But the fact that they are binary, in fact, the answer is yes, but they are not actually binary. If you increase the resolution, they become quaternary, 4.
I see.
If you increase the resolution, they become 6. Go figure. But the most important takeaway that I would have, because see, marriage related ceremony is sort of a traditional, sort of a emotional, I mean, maybe there is a reason, the scientific reason is not required. But the Arundhati Vasishta, as is used as a hard evidence, the way the evidence NyayaDarshana likes, or modern science likes, that Arundhati going ahead of Vasishta has everything to do with the precession of the Earth's axis and nothing to do with the fact they are binary or quaternary.
I think in marriage they use
Thank you.
for Arundhati Nyaya for different kind of thought, because they say first look at this tree, look at behind the tree, because it is not very much visible star, so they just point out until you reaches to the real Arundhati. So that's what marriage means, but it does not have to be scientific meaning for that in marriage.
Correct.
Arunaji, that can be done for any star. Why Arundhati?
Yeah, because it's fade.
Because of what I explained.
Yeah. Well, I see. That's what I'm saying. Dilipji, see, for a marriage purposes, as I said, for marriage purpose, you can have why Arundhati Vasishta 10 different explanation, like 10 different types of batata vada or aloo vada, and that's perfectly fine. Somebody says we put ginger in it, other person says we put green chilies, and that's fine. But when we're talking a dating, and you didn't say that, but I'm saying we cannot say, oh, actually that's what professors and academics do in the conferences. And that's why my wife said, just don't go to these conferences, even if they invite you as a plenary speaker. Okay. Which is like, they will say, some professor will say, oh, I like this date also. And that other professor had come and he also has a good date. Not a good date. What is possible logically? All of our dates, including mine, it can be wrong. All of our dates could be wrong, or only one of them is correct. There is no third scenario, right? So I think that's when it comes to this, we have to understand from scientific principle. What you said is correct. In fact, Arundhati Vasishta is used for other purposes. I don't know if you knew that. It is used to test your eyesight. And in fact, there are sentences. There is Arundhati Nyaya, by the way, Arundhati Nyaya, which means, I mean, we all will fall into that, by the way, which is to say, because of the skies also, if the time when you stop seeing them as two stars because they are next to each other and the one is very small, it's your time now. Your eyesight has gone and it's time to go. Yeah, so it was used as a going to the eye specialist office to see, do you need glasses, do you have a 20/20 vision? It was also used for that purposes. Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
This was fantastic. Your presentation was great.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that. And I would like you to come again to our forum on the topic of your choice. But it's up to Arunaji.
Of course, I would like to listen to him about his last lecture last week. I heard Krishna's Dwarka myth to history. It is just, just mind-boggling.
Arunaji and Shivram.
And I would actually, Nilesh would like to have this book you were holding on Nyaya Shastra. How it is available online?
Yes. If you, Arunaji, if you don't mind, not just this book. I mean, I just picked one.
I have other books.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a very standard book. But my point is, if you don't mind reading in PDF, then archive.org, like ARCHIV, archive.org, you are going to find this and I would say easily 10-20 other books on Nyaya Shastra.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but including this book.
Archive.com, right?
Yeah, and you archive.org. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And you will also, I mean, I don't know how much Sanskrit expertise in this group. And again, I'm a self-taught Sanskritist. I still don't understand grammar and whatnot. But because I use it so much, I directionally understand. Like, I mean, say for everyone would have a different mother tongue. But if your mother tongue is Marathi actually any Indian language, I would say, Marathi, Bangla, Gujarati, Hindi, even Telugu, and even Kannada. Maybe a little bit challenge for Tamil and Malayali, or not even Malayali. You can easily read, if you can read Sanskrit, the first draft you get 30% of it, directional what they are saying.
Of course, yeah.
So you will find even Sanskrit commentaries. One more source I will give you, and since Arunaji, you tend to watch this, if you type in YouTube NyayaDarshana, okay, this is by what you call this, the group Arya Samaj. Some Swamiji of Arya Samaj, I forgot his name. The lectures are given in Ajmer, I think, and there are 120 of his lectures only on NyayaDarshana, going right from the beginning to the end. Of course, it's going to take time because each lecture is like a 90 minutes. After some time, you'll know how to fast forward and where to go and stop and so on. But these are beautiful. These are beautiful, worth listening to. I mean, if anyone is interested in NyayaDarshana, I'm not saying that is the only source, but it's worth listening to.
Thank you so much. And please, can you provide the information about your friend who is in, I think, Washington, D.C.?
Dr. Ali Narayan. Yes. I have your email and we communicate.
So we will be very delighted to have.
Nilesh, question regarding your presentation. The NyayaDarshana outlines the logic and the scientific approach. Is that all these darshanas have taken their basic knowledge from the Upanishads, right? Veda and Upanishads.
They have taken from there, or they see, because these are applied, right? So they have developed. I mean, so the knowledge kind of existed in an informal basis in Upanishad. It is there in Upanishad, but Upanishad, sometimes you will even read it and not know it. You know what they are saying. Same thing with Rigveda. Yeah, but these people have the sutra is essentially, the way I have understood or the way I have read, is like when a teacher, let's say a teacher is spending time with his student for an hour, like today's lecture, and at the end of it, he summarizes his lecture in, say, one line. Okay, that is the sutra. And it's just like a mnemonics, like you remember, we would remember some all the capitals of the India state and by ABCD, something like this. That's how it was done. And so it was done at some time, things got added. So NyayaDarshana is, we consider the original book of Gautama, but there are like hundreds of books on NyayaDarshana. I mean, Nyaya in thing, and they are equally fascinating written to our times.
So my question about the darshanas, NyayaDarshana, is Vedanta or the Uttar Mimamsa, they also have similar explanation and discussion on the logic and how to approach any particular problem. So they all have drawn from a big original well, which is probably the Vedas.
Correct. Okay. And but also Veda has a bigger definition. So Krishna Bhagavad Gita will say Uddhva Moolam Adasakam Ashwattham Pravuravyam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani. He says the Veda is not to be searched into a book, although book also has it, but it is to be seen in the nature and learned from the nature, right? So people learn through this meditation, people learn through experimentation, just the way modern approach we are doing, trial and error and stuff like that. Yes.
So I think we have gone, I can hear him. Whatever time it takes, but I think we have. And I would be so much thankful to you if you can come again on this group and enlighten us with other topics.
Okay, yeah, as time permitting, I'll be happy to come in the future. And thank you for inviting me. So I got to know the members, and so glad to know. Actually, that's what I feel. I have the folks who are truly studying my works. I really don't know them, just like you. I mean, we interacted, but I didn't necessarily know that you are following my books or watching my videos.
I follow almost every of your talk. In India as well here.
Yeah.
And it is because your talks are not just like you said, just go here or there.
Right.
You have to see
Nilesh, is it?
you have to see the facts and focus on the facts. That's
Right.
all.
Right.
So Nilesh, is it okay if Arunaji shares your
Yeah,
email
yeah.
with us?
My email, please. Arunaji, feel free to share my
Okay.
email.
Yes, yes,
email
of course I will do that.
Yeah, with
Okay,
everyone.
thank you.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
quickly,
I'll
one
get
last
in touch
point.
with
I'll
you.
say the paradox I see, and to the Arunaji's point, I mean, because she watches so much, many times, actually good number of times, 90% of the time, the people come and who argue with me just out of nowhere, like through email or what you call it, the social media, are the folks who have never read my books, never read my blogs, and never watched my videos. And in the Marathi, I don't know how many of you know, like Dilip ji would know, but Ramdas Swami has said something very well. You know, it goes like Samula Grantha Pailya Vena, Ugacha Tevizo Dushana, Guna Sangata Avaguna Paheto Yeka Padata Murkha. Like learned fool is the one, you know, who instead of reading the original work, right? And when something has been emphasized, he asks something else or she asks something else, and Guna Sangata Pahe Avaguna. So learned fool. So actually that's what happens. Many people will come and I am a bit polite in the sense I'll say, well, okay, tell me the question, I might answer. My wife notices it. She immediately goes there and says, have you read his books? The person says, no, I have not, but I don't agree with it. And she said, well, hold on. First read the books.
That is a big problem.
Big problem.
You know, I will recommend that, you know, please everyone, if you are interested in his work, read his book, to historical drama. It's a lengthy book, little bit, it will take time to, but it's just fantastic.
Correct. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead, Sitaramji.
Okay, one more question
Sure.
we have. Okay, all right, okay. All right, so please, we will wrap up and thank you and dhanyavad to all of
Thank
you
you,
and
Namaskar.
especially to Dr. Nilesh for enlightening us about today's topic. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.